الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله إن الحمد لله ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ونصلي ونسلم عليه وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وعلى أصحابه بجهدهم وتضحيتهم قام هذا الدين فرضي الله عنهم أجمعين. In this khutbah, we want to reflect on the Quran, specifically on this surah of Yusuf, or the story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. And in that story, we learn something that's called fiqh al-tamkeen. And fiqh al-tamkeen is considered, the ulama, they started to deal with it more and more in today's time. كيف نتمكن على أحوالنا وعلى الدنيا. It has a lot to do with empowering ourselves. How do we deal with the trials and tribulations of this world? And because the deen of Islam is not a deen that is just about ruhaniyat. It's not a deen that just deals with the heart and the soul. It's a deen that deals with the whole of life, with the whole of the human being. And this is why when we talk about fiqh itself, Fiqh can mean fahm, understanding. Sometimes amongst the ulama, mostly, it means the ahkam, the rules that pertain to our actions. والفقه متعلق بأفعال المكلفين عباد الله. The human being has actions in this dunya. And so we should know how we're going to navigate in the dunya. Because the dunya is not sudfa. It's not without purpose, not without meaning. So we should know how to function in the world. The Quran, in its hidayah, and specifically in the story of Surah Yusuf, is telling us that this dunya is going to bring to us trials and tribulations. It's going to bring to us fitan. And we have to know how it is that we're going to deal with that fitan. That's the general reflection of the khutbah. But more specifically, when we talk about empowering ourselves, I want to focus on the relationship of a father to his son. Because the story of Yusuf is not only about Yusuf, but the ajib part, the most distinct, strange part about the story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, is that it's a story about Yaqub. When you look at Qasas al-Anbiya or the stories of the Anbiya, you're going to find that the story of Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam is in the story of Yusuf. So it's like watching a father worry about his son, and then the son has an understanding of what the father goes through. And it's to teach fathers what it is that their children go through. But at the end of the day, what connects Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam to Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam is الارتباط الإيمانية والالتزام في الدين مع بعض. They're connected by iman. They're connected by their practice of the deen together. Yaqub, he had a number of other children. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam had brothers. But what allowed Yaqub to deal with the problems in his family? Listen, we're talking about a prophet of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. This prophet alayhi salatu wasalam had problems with his children and his family. We judge people. If we see the children, we say, what kind of family is that? And here the example is that this prophet had problems with his children. But what allowed him to deal with those issues in his family was the reality of his connection with Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. What allowed that family to survive what it went through, betrayal and treachery, and the intention to murder, jealousy, was that within that family there was iman. Every family has problems. But if those who are members of that family that have iman, if they don't come together to deal with the issues of the family, then those issues will overpower it. Because these issues are sometimes beyond us. So when we look, also, it's important to understand the background of the surah itself. We find in some of the tafsir, it's mentioned that this surah was revealed at the last phase of Nubuwwah in Mecca. When the Prophet ﷺ was in Mecca, before making hijrah to Medina, at that time, Quraysh, they wanted to kill him. And so the Quran is revealing Surah Al-Yusuf completely as a way to warn Quraysh of what's going to happen, that they won't be successful, and as a way to remind the Prophet ﷺ that Allah is with him. And also to make sure that the people of the book that are enemies of the Prophet, that they have an understanding that what's being revealed of the Quran is revelation itself, is wahi. And what's distinct here is that Surah Yusuf, as it relates to Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam here, is telling us how the people of Iman are victorious in every time and every age. It's showing us that Nubuwwah is continuous, that Islam is nothing new, that Islam comes to revive the way of Nubuwwah that was lost. It's possible that the people will deviate from Nubuwwah. It's possible that the people will become corrupt on the earth. And it's showing in this story when Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam goes into Egypt, the comparison between civilization and Iman and civilization and Kufr. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, people, he struggled with his brothers being jealous of him. He was sold into slavery and lost his freedom. Then he had to confront his desire, and he had to confront being slandered and sexual harassment. Then he was imprisoned, then he was left neglected. And in that time he was in exile from his own family and from his own land. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala gave Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam position and power at a time when a natural disaster was occurring. This Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he didn't deal with that natural disaster that was about to hit. They were about not to have food in the land by just saying, we depend on Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and that's it, without any real tawakkul. But he took the asbab, he took the means. And he used his position in power to deal with the situation that he was confronting to bring benefit to the people. To show you the reality of what leadership is. The reality of what Iman is. We don't see all of these natural disasters occurring and just say, well, it's the end time. That's not the understanding of the believers. We don't see these things that are occurring like what we see occurred within these past days and then just start to have despair. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, who's the prophet of Allah, took action. He began to organize. He began to see what could be done depending on Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to address the situation. These types of events will continue to occur more and more. We can't have that mindset of just saying, well, this is from the signs of the end of time and that's it. The believers have to have a solution. When there's corruption in the land, when the believers don't stand up, when the believers don't take their place in society and don't contribute back to the society, what begins to happen in the dunya is that everything begins to turn upside down. Why? Because there's sunan, there's rules. يعني في سنن يحكم على الدنيا. And those rules that govern over the dunya, they demand that there's no corruption or that corruption is minimal. They demand that there's justice. And in this case, what we see in this story, and this is for our fathers, there's a demand that a father take his responsibility in the home. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he goes to his father, Ya abati, and he tells him what it is that's going on. He tells him about his dream. And what's the response of Yaqub? Ya bunayya, my son. And he gives him guidance. لا تقص رؤيك على إخوتك. That means that he's telling him, don't tell your brothers what it is that you have seen in this dream. Because Yaqub understands, alayhi salatu wasalam, that his children, they don't deal with each other fairly. Yaqub understands his children who has ithbat ala deen and who still needs to grow. Who is it that is established in his iman and who needs to grow? In other words, the role of the father is the role of the murabbi. The role of the father is not just to be an ATM machine and you just feeding your family and paying bills, but the role of the father is to be there and understand what's going on in the household and to guide the children in what direction they're going to go. Because these children are children, like Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. When they deal with the problems of the dunya, they're going to be tested from every angle. And we see that. We live in a time period where our children can be walking down the street and it's easy for them to get arrested for no means, no reason. We see that in the Muslim world. How many people that want to establish what's good for the society end up in prison? How many people in the workplace, they just want to go and work, and what they find themselves is confronted with shahwa and fitna in the workplace. How many families, within those families, there's jealousy and one brother doesn't talk to another brother for years. Years. So when we see these realities, people, we have to realize that the dunya is what it is. Iman dictates that we have an understanding of how to deal with the problems as they are, real problems, and overcome those problems by looking at what it is that the Quran is giving us from tawjihat. The example here of tawakkul on the side of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam and on the side of Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam is that they do what they can do depending on Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, having belief that at the end everything will work itself out, even though they're suffering in the time. You don't think that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam wasn't suffering any sort of depression because he was in that state? He loved his brothers. And he had to live with the fact that he saw his brothers plotting on him. Yaqub, a prophet of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam, had to watch his sons. This is the Bayt al-Nubuwah, Bayt al-Wahi. He had to watch his sons plotting. This is a house of prophethood, a house in which there's an understanding of the deen. You don't think Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, his heart wasn't heavy? We say this to say that our hearts are going to be heavy in the dunya. And they may be heavy for long periods of time. They may be heavy because of what goes on in our families. They may be heavy because of what we see in society. They may be heavy for a number of different reasons. The situation that you're in. But the believer has to be able to deal with that reality, knowing that if I stay firm on iman, if I stay firm in my relationship with Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, I will come. I'll be able to navigate. But if we break in our iman, then what is it that we're going to have to be able to deal with the dunya? And I hate to say this, but many of us who are breaking in iman, it could be for a number of different reasons, but we have to take responsibility. One reason that we can take responsibility over is the issue of our fathers taking their role in the household and doing what they need to do as far as guiding their children properly. You can't do the 15-hour work week only, work day. You can't just focus on the making money only. This is a time period where the Muslims from every angle, we find ourselves beat. How do you overcome that if you don't focus on rebuilding the family? How do you focus on rebuilding the family if there's no ثقافة الحوار في البيت? There's no communication, there's no conversation. So we have to learn that with our own children and our own families. That's the first thing that Surah Yusuf teaches us. ثقافة الحوار. وحقيقة الشورى والقيادة في البيت وأهمية التربية. Surah Yusuf, it teaches us the importance of having communication and conversation. The importance of taking opinions from each other. The importance of leadership in the household. When that's there, and when we guide our children in that way, then we can send them out into the dunya, and the only thing that we have left is trusting in Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Because we gave our children everything that they need to be able to deal with the dunya. Not just the issue of giving them a car or a house or this or that, but giving them what they need from the principles of Iman to be able to deal with the dunya. Because if we don't have our children understand how to deal with that dunya, we see what we see. There was a report 3 weeks ago that came out from NPR. And don't be mad at me, but it has to be said. The report said that the Muslims right now have the highest rate of suicide in this country. The youth, more so than the Christians and others. And that's coming from the types of pressure that our youth are. Don't tell me that is ضعف الإيمان, يعني عدم التربية. No, the pressures that the Muslim family is under is a pressure that is breaking the people. You understand what I'm saying? So the only way that we can deal with this reality is if we reorient ourselves as a community. And reorienting ourselves as a community begins with each person understanding their role. Today we talk about the role of the father. Tomorrow we talk about the role of the children. Tomorrow we talk about the role of the uncles and the aunts. We talk about the role of the masjid until we're able to rebuild ourselves. But one of the most difficult things, I'll tell you, brothers, is when we lose our ability to talk to our sons and our daughters especially. That weighs heavy on the heart. I was called the other day. A sister was asking me advice about what to do with her daughter. She wants to get married, so on and so forth. She's talking to a non-Muslim. So I asked, where's the father? He's not involved with, he's mad at her for this. See, we highlighted the role of the father and the son. We leave the role of the father and the daughter to another time period. But just making you aware of the fact that when you're not involved and you don't see what's going on, and when you take that type of approach, it has an impact on our children. And that's not what we learn from the Quran. What we learn from the Quran is idaratul bayt, how to navigate in the bayt, how to navigate in the house. And so what we see from Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, you need to see as Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam. Don't just think about your rights, think about what it is that your children are going through. Think about Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, everything that he went through. When he was by himself with his brothers, when he was sold into slavery, when he was in Egypt, when he was in prison. Think about it from the angle of your children. When he was dealing with the wife of Aziz. And when you look at it from that angle, the angle of Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, looking at what's going on with my child, what is it that they're going through in the dunya? وَتَتَحَسَّسْ شُعَيَّانِ قَلِيلًا. And you begin to become sensitive to that reality, then you open up the hiwar slowly. How are you doing? Slowly you open that up. Stories. This is how I navigated. I went through this. This is what happens. Tawjihat. Well, this is tawakkul. This is taqwa. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر لي ولكم والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. The ulama, they say في الإيادة إفادة. When we review things, there's benefit reviewing because we're talking about principles of the deen. And I believe I mentioned this from this minbar on another occasion, if I'm correct. But when we look at how Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, how He addressed the angels, He told the angels, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. This is important that we have this principle correct. Not only did Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala talk about your position and my position in the dunya, the Khalifa of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in the dunya is a position of sharaf, of karam, is a position of honor and dignity. But in the midst of that, when Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is talking to the angels, they speak back. أَتَجَعَلْ فِيهَا مَن يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. When you create in the earth this being who create corruption, bloodshed in the dunya, this is the other side of the human being. Istikhlaf wa al-fasad. One side is we walk the way, the minhaj of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. The other side is that we go against that minhaj. That's what we see in the dunya today. But the important point here of reflection which relates to the khutbah is that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala didn't have to say anything to the angels or even take their opinion. You see what I'm saying? And unfortunately, what we do in our culture, which it doesn't work here, Uskud ya walid. We tell our children, be quiet. I'm sahib al-bayt. I'm the one that rules here. That type of approach is the type of approach which doesn't allow. This is a society which is selfish. This is a society which teaches the individual just focus on yourself. And so if Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in the Quran can have some dialogue with the angels, then the angels are not equivalent to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Then what about the father and his children in the household? وهذه هي حقيقة الشورى. تستشير الناس لا يهم الرتبة. It's not important what is their station and their position, what you are, this, that. Take their opinion, listen, no problem. And if we begin to have that with our children, then we can begin to have a better relationship. We ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to guide us and to aid us and to forgive us. We ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to protect us and our children in our household. And we ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to protect us from this virus. And we ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to protect us from this weather. And we ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala for the poor and those who have lost their jobs. And we ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala for those who are sick in the hospital. And we ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala for our single parents. And we ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala that Allah forgive those who have gone before us. They have gone from this world for whatever reason, either with COVID. We ask that Allah accept them as shuhada. And we ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, especially for those families who are suffering right now with their relatives in the hospital and they don't have any means to deal with that situation. We ask that Allah ease their hearts. Aqimus salat.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
استو. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم ملك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا صراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواسوا بالحق وتواسوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم ملك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا صراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
السلام عليكم. إن شاء الله نرحب أخينا الشيخ يوسف. إن شاء الله سيكون إمام هنا معنا إن شاء الله مستمر يعني في المسجد، تولى إن شاء الله أمور الدعوة وأمور الشباب وغيرها إن شاء الله، وهذه أول جمعة له بعد أن أصبح مع في فريق هذا المسجد إن شاء الله. On your behalf إن شاء الله we welcome Sheikh Yusuf Rise. He's the new Imam here, inshallah, with us. Add our team, inshallah. We'll take care of da'wah, youth, and a lot of stuff, inshallah. He will work. We welcome him, inshallah. This is the first Jum'ah for him. Inshallah, we'll give the English one, inshallah, every Friday. Barakallahu feekum wa jazakumullah.
Assalamu alaikum. Just quick announcement. Assalamu alaikum. There's a youth night, 7 p.m. to Isha with Brother Saeed Kayed. The Masjid Family Picnic is September 5th. It will be in County Park, inshallah. And there is Islamic Relief. We need volunteers for that. It's going to be a Sunday, September 12th, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. So please go downstairs to volunteer to register. Also, Al-Noor and Iqra Institute are open for registration, and we are still having our election September 5th. 5 seats are available. It's in the end of September, and there's 5 seats available. So please just nominate anybody downstairs.
Inshallah. They work here for